everybody, I am so glad to be here today to talk about one of my favorite movies. I know this is a bit of a surprise to maybe some of you, but I decided that I am going to review the first three, at the very least, Indiana Jones movies before Dial of Destiny comes out next week. And what better way to start off than with Raiders of the Lost Ark, obviously directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, Paul Freeman, and so many others. I mean, look, this film, if you guys have been following me for a while, did make my community list of Nathaniel, Ahart and Company's top 100 greatest films of all time, even scoring a spot in the top 20, so this is obviously a very beloved film, and I've already gone over it, so I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. I don't know how long it's going to end up running because, you know, I started talking about Raiders. I don't stop. But this really is one of my favorite films of all time. I'm just going to say it right off the bat. And with good reason. I mean, this is the definitive action-adventure film, if there ever was one. Starting off right from the beginning, when you get introduced to the Peru setting, 1936. Just one of the greatest character introductions of all time in Indiana Jones, when, you know, that guy pulls a gun on him and then he just whips him. And you don't see his face until that moment. And I think that's what's so brilliant, the way they build the mystique of his character there. And you see right from the beginning how resourceful, how intelligent this guy is, basically following every single step to a T and taking precaution at every corner because he knows something wrong could happen at any second. And of course, going in and getting the fertility idol, I mean, one of the most iconic sequences, not just in Indiana Jones, but in film history in general, of course, with a Cepito, with a young Alfred Molina escorting him, and who obviously turns on him a few seconds later. But the whole sequence is just incredible, right from the beginning, but especially right after he grabs that idol, and of course the ensuing boulder chase, which has become one of the most iconic moments in all of cinema. It just is. And I love how that transitions into the introduction of Belloc, played by Paul Freeman, who I really do think is the best villain in the Indiana Jones franchise, just because I think he's the perfect foil to Dr. Jones there. He represents everything that he does, but goes about it in the completely wrong and unjustifiable way. Of course, teaming up with the Nazis, as we find out later on. And the way I think this movie is absolutely brilliant in the way in which it's structured, because you see the whole time, just like from one scenario to another, it seems like India's gotten the upper hand. He makes it all the way through these insinuating, just these very, very difficult obstacles that are placed in front of him, comes out on the other end, and then someone like Belloc gets the upper hand on him, and then it's just a cat and mouse game the whole time. It's all power dynamics, but the way they go about it, it feels so real. It feels like there's stakes. It feels like these characters are in danger. I mean, everything about this movie feels authentic in the best way possible, and I think that's why it stood the test of time all these years later, and why we're still talking about it. And I also love once he gets in the plane, when he's running away from the native people, and there's a snake in the plane. It's like you see this guy doing all these incredible things, and then he's intimidated by just a single snake. It's an amazing subversion, and I think it is what makes Indiana Jones such a great character. And another reason this is so brilliant, I love the scene when the guys come in and are informing Indy about the Nazis trying to find this peace in Cairo, thinking that they're finding the Ark. The way they lay out the exposition, it seems so human in a way that it doesn't feel like it's just an exposition dump, because characters will like cut each other off at certain points, or someone will make a joke, and it's genuinely very, very interesting, the mythos to the Ark of the Covenant and everything that goes with it. So you're thoroughly engaged throughout the entire scene. It isn't just like, let's shove information down our audience throats, but instead let's deliver it in a way that's digestible and in a way that you can almost relate to, as if someone was telling you a story. I mean, just stuff like that. I'm going to go on and on about this script in this review, I assure you, but it really is stellar in the best way possible, and it's scenes like that that really make it work for me. And that goes right into, like, him being an archaeology professor. It's like, most of these kids don't know, like, he's the most badass professor of all time. But they do know one thing, especially the ladies, that young Dr. Jones there is a very good-looking man. And I just love the humor in this movie. I think it's established right away, but especially in that classroom scene when the girl's blinking her eyes and it says, "I love you," reading across. It's just absolutely hysterical gags like that, and Harrison Ford's reaction to it. And my goodness, Harrison Ford is this character. It's hard to say what's a more definitive role, this or Han Solo, but it's definitely, from my understanding, his favorite role he's ever taken on, and it's not hard to see why. He is such a complex character, like all the things we've been saying, but he really is a dick at the same time, especially when you finally get to Nepal and you get introduced to Karen Allen as Marion Ravenwood, who is one of the greatest characters in the Indiana Jones franchise, and I think the greatest love interest of Dr. Jones, should I say. But just the way we're introduced to her, trying to outdrink these guys, hustling them in her bar, and not only is it like set her character up as she's a sort of a badass, but it also plays into the narrative later on, which I think is brilliant writing from Lawrence Kasdan's part there, whose script is just absolutely exceptional from top to bottom. But when it comes to, like, Indiana Jones's background, this scene is a little dicey, because it's almost insinuated that the reason there's bad blood between Marion and Indy is because he raped her, or at least statutorily speaking, and it kind of makes you question, like, is this actually like a good guy? But somehow the script still makes you like this guy, and I think maybe that has to do with Harrison Ford's charisma as well. But I don't know, like, obviously pitting him against the Nazis definitely helps, and the time period, of course, is a bit different, you could say. But I think just having that bit of subtext in the background is kind of unsettling, but also makes things interesting, I suppose. I hope that doesn't sound ignorant in any way, but I don't know. That's just the way they wrote this character, and I think it's incredibly a complex take. But yeah, I mean, right after that, of course, we get introduced to the Nazis and Major Todt, of course, played by Ronald Lacey in this, who's so creepy. Just whenever he walks on screen, you look at his face and you're just immediately set on edge. And I just love the interactions that he has with Marion in this scene. And then, of course, the amazing choreographed bar fight, which is definitely one of the standout scenes in the movie when Indy comes back. And that's the other thing about this movie. The stunts, the choreography, everything about it is just so well executed from top to bottom. And I think that shows 100% in the scene. And then, of course, once they get to Cairo, oh my goodness, I love that stuff. Especially like little scenes when Marion looks back at Indy, is just smiling. The chemistry between Harrison Ford and Karen Allen is absolutely electric, off the charts in this movie. And I think that's another reason why Marion stands out as one of the best in the franchise. And then, of course, we get to Sallah, played by John Rhys-Davies, who probably is Indiana Jones' most enduring ally. He's the only character that's been in more than 2 Indiana Jones movies, being in the first, Last Crusade, which we'll get to later, and Dial of Destiny. So definitely the most enduring character in the franchise besides Indiana Jones himself. And I just love that whole Cairo chase sequence, which is one of the best. I'm going to keep saying this with a whole review, but one of the best action set pieces of all time. And I love how kind of cartoonish it is too, you know, like and it's slapstick in a way that doesn't feel cheesy. And that's what I love about it, you know, like they're hitting people with pans or dragging them through doors. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy with the stuff that they come up with. But of course, the most iconic moment from that entire sequence is when the swordman's like whipping his sword around and Harrison Ford just shoots him. One of the greatest improvised moments in all of cinema, because for those of you who do know, like, I guess it was really, really hot that day, go figure. And Harrison Ford was like suffering from dysentery, and so instead of like fighting, he was like, why don't I just fucking shoot him? And that's what he did, and I can't imagine the movie playing any better than what happens in that scene. It's just so amazing. But yeah, back to Indy and Belloq. I also just love their interactions that they have, like in the scene after, where he's talking with him at the table. He says, "You want to talk to God? Let's go see him together." I mean, it's just one of the most cold-blooded, badass lines in all of cinema. Just absolutely amazing, their interactions throughout the entire movie. So many iconic quotes, too. You could quote from this, like, "Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?" Or, of course, in the scene after this when the monkey eats the dates. And I just love how they build tension in that scene. It's like every second it seems like he's about to put it in his mouth and kill himself, but something distracts him by a little bit. And it just, the ensuing tension that's built all throughout this narrative is amazing. And then, of course, Sallah catches it. Bad dates. I mean, oh my goodness, how can you not love that scene? And then, of course, the whole excavation in Cairo, amazing. When he finds the staff of Ra and the location of the Ark of the Covenant. And of course, I mean, I think those scenes are even more enhanced by John Williams' amazing score. I mean, of course, talking about John Williams being incredible at this point is a broken record, but really, I mean, what he does to this movie, I think it's one of his most iconic scores, which is to say it's one of the most iconic scores of all time. Crazy that this did not win the Oscar is just beyond me, that they lost to cheesy, synthy 80s stuff. But regardless, I absolutely think that John Williams' score enhances this film tenfold. And yet again, I mean, Indiana Jones, I think another reason why he does come off so likable in this narrative is just his sense of humor. Of course, I love when when Belloq's saying to him when he's in the pit with the Ark, it's like, who knows, maybe someday you'll be worth something. He just laughs like, ha ha ha, son of a bitch. Just under his breath. I mean, moments like that really make him such a relatable character. But back to the whole thing with Marion, just that whole setup with her out drinking these guys, the way it plays back into her creating this ploy to kind of escape from Belloq, seeming like, oh, she's got this, and then you realize throughout this ensuing conversation that it's his own family's wine, so he has the upper hand. I mean, writing like that is just so tight and executed on a level that I don't think most movies even think of doing, and I just think enhances this character once again to an extent that a lot of other movies wouldn't, because she could have just been the love interest, right? But she really is kind of a character that feels very strong and willed, but still kind of feminine and realistic, like the way she reacts to things. It's something that's very real, you know what I mean? Unlike another character, which we might get into in the next movie, I think Marion just absolutely is amazing. And then, of course, the whole breaking out of the tomb and oh my goodness, the ensuing plane sequence. Yet again, the way they set all these set pieces up is just absolutely incredible. You see the building blocks in the scene, and the tension keep rising and rising and rising. And of course, the fight with the shirtless guy in front of the plane is just amazing. And the way the whole thing eventually just blows up, it really is, there's nothing like it. Once again, I have to give so much props to the stunts here, and the set work is just absolutely beyond incredible. But to me, one of the greatest action sequences, not just in this movie, because I think it's easily the best in this movie, but in all of cinema, is that chase sequence. And I just love when Indiana Jones is riding into the desert and on the horse, and you hear the dun 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 dun. I just get so pumped every time I hear it. Desert Chase is one of the greatest compositions John Williams has ever created. But my goodness, when Indy's trying to get to the Ark on the trucks and fighting off all the Nazis, once again, I think it's some of the best choreography of all time. But to me, the part that really stands out is when he's falling underneath the truck and he gets that whip and he's like moving, or not even the whip, he's just like moving himself underneath the truck, and then he's like getting dragged in the back by the whip. I mean, really one of the greatest stunts of all time, and I believe Harrison Ford did it himself, so much props, because it still blows my mind to this day how something like that could have been conceived and executed. And yet again, I mean, John Williams' triumphant score really enhances the tension even more. And then again, it's like one of those things, they escape Salah's singing after Marion kisses him. It's like, this one is for your wife, this one is for your children, and this one is for you. I mean, what an iconic scene. And even little moments like when her and Indy are on the ship and he's in agonizing pain after she hits him with the mirror and after all the fighting, and he's just like saying, she's asking him which spot doesn't hurt, and he like starts pointing to places of his body, like his forehead, and then it gets to his lips. I mean, just brilliant character interactions and writing. It's so well thought out, and my goodness, I can't give Lawrence Kasdan any more praise than I already have given. But then again, it's like one of those things, the power dynamics keep shifting. Then the Nazis get the Ark, and then Indiana Jones is about to blow up the Ark once he sneaks onto the Nazi ship. And yet again, I just love how Belloq is once again able to get the upper hand on Indy in this, saying, you know, you want this as much as I do, and you don't want to see a precious artifact like this be blown to bits. And you understand why he doesn't blow it up, and I think that's what's so brilliant about the writing, once again, is you understand Indy's mentality through and through, and so it makes sense to have him not blow up the Ark, and it doesn't feel contrived whatsoever. It really does feel like a natural progression of thought. And then, of course, I mean, obviously, I think people who haven't even seen this movie know about the scene where they open the Ark and their faces melt off. I mean, some of the best practical effects I've ever seen, and easily some of the creepiest. It's crazy that this was rated PG, because you watch this and you would not be able to know that, you know, considering what the rating system was back in the day. But my goodness, it's just absolutely amazing. And of course, they get the Ark, and you know, Indy isn't satisfied with it, and then of course he walks off with Marion, and we get that pull-out shot of the Ark in the storage facility, which we'd later see in another movie in the franchise. And that's how Raiders of the Lost Ark ends. And my goodness, you've seen it, you love it probably if you're clicking on this video. I think it's a flawless movie from top to bottom. Every time I watch it, I'm just so impressed by the writing, the set pieces, the stunts. Everything about this movie is so well written. I cannot praise Spielberg, Lucas, Kasdan, the whole cast and crew enough for just what an incredible feat this is. Of course, you know what score I'm going to give this if it wasn't evident from like the first minute of this review. Raiders of the Lost Ark, I'm going to give a 10 out of 10. An absolute perfect movie if I've ever seen one, and one of the finest achievements in Steven Spielberg's career. So yeah, guys, that's my review for Raiders of the Lost Ark. What do you think about Raiders? Let me know in the comments below. I hope it's as glowing as what I have just stated. And of course, smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content, and if you want to see more Indiana Jones reviews, because I assure you the review for Temple of Doom is coming very, very soon, within the next few days. I cannot wait to talk about that movie in the franchise, as well as everything else. And yeah, guys, until the next video, I will see you later.